Okay, I'm going to jump in. My name is Lorenzo Bonina. I am with Accruit here, and I'm here to talk to you about 1031 exchanges in education and the current agreement slash partnership that we have together with Universal Elite Realty, which can bring more revenue to your guys' company. A little bit about my background. I live in Orange County, specifically Ladera Ranch, and I've been in commercial brokerage for about 14 years. I'm an agent, I'm a broker, I'm a CCIM, and I sit on the board of Southern California chapter of CCIM. And that's how Devin and I first met. So I'm with you. I've done a lot of spec work over the years with clients without seeing the benefits of that. So I feel your pain, a lot of you. I've been with Accruit, the qualified intermediary, for about a year and a half now, and it's been a great partnership. It is the only technology-based QI out there. All of them are also are otherly owned by title and escrow companies. And this is the only qualified intermediary that is not owned by a title and escrow company. It's the fastest growing QI. It's number two in the nation right now. And about a year and a half ago, that was the number 10 spot. So fastly growing and looking to make its impact. One of the reasons that we have the partnership today is one of the programs that I'll get into later, QI Connect. But for now, I want you to see on the screen, this is all my contact information. My email, my cell phone is on the bottom, the mobile, and then that's my office. You can text either number. And what I want to do is just, if you guys can either take a screenshot of it, at any point in time, if we have our ears open and there's anything conversation wise with a client that says 1031 exchange or deferring taxes, or I don't want to pay taxes, or anything with a sale that they want to reinvest, I want you to think of me. I want you to think of me, and I want you to call my cell phone. I want you to text me. I want you to send me an email, because I'm happy to jump on any kind of call that you want if you have any questions or talk to your client. And again, talking as a representative of Universal Elite 1031 Exchange, because that's the setup that we have here. Logo to come, marketing packet to come, but as a representative of your company, not anything separately there that I can help out with. So there's my contact info and a little bit about today's objectives. I want to give you a really broad understanding of what a 1031 exchange is. I know that there's some people with a lot of knowledge on 1031 exchanges, and none of you have heard of a 1031 exchange before, or some of you have not heard of a 1031 exchange before at all. Talk about the requirements, the issues that come up with the 1031 exchange, the pitfalls, and then gaining understanding of the federal requirements. And one of your clients participates in a 1031 exchange. And again, as an agent myself, as somebody in commercial real estate, I understand that the value you provide for your client directly dictates how much they use you in the future. You do a transaction with them and you provide zero value, there is a 0% chance they're going to use you the next time. So the more value that we can provide to our client, the more likely that we gain that client for life. And today, I want to just touch on this as adding just a little bit more value to the conversations that you have with your clients, letting them know maybe something that they didn't know before or they didn't realize was eligible during this. Because again, I want to provide value to you, you want to provide value to your client. So we're going to go through this really quickly here of what a 1031 exchange is and what a QI is. QI is going to be a qualified intermediary. And if I mention QI, that's what a qualified intermediary is. And it's a company that holds the funds in the interim between when you sell your relinquished property and then when you buy your replacement property in a 1031 exchange. And a 1031 exchange 1031 exchange started in 1954, originally enacted. This was not originally what it was intended for today's purposes, but in 1954, the IRS wrote the 1031 exchange tax code. And then in 1986, the Tax Reform Act increased capital gains, and the 1031 exchange code gained a lot of use. People wanted to avoid paying taxes, defer paying taxes, and so the 1031 exchange grew in popularity. In 91, 5 years later, the creation of qualified intermediaries started. As you know, you cannot hold the funds after the sale of a property while looking for your replacement property. So qualified intermediary started, and it's grown immensely since then. And then in 2017, that's when a lot of things changed. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act eliminated personal property exchanges. And my company, Accruit, actually used to only do personal property exchanges all the way up until 2019. And they've been around since 2000, so 26 years. So when that switched from personal property to real property, it was a complete game changer for us. We've exploded in popularity and in growth, but this is kind of the background on 1031 exchanges here for your knowledge. There's three types of property here. One, you have your primary residence. Two, you have your second home, your vacation home. Three, you have your investment property. Anybody in the room today know which kind of property you can exchange into or out of?
Income.
Investment property. There you go. You can't invest or you can't do a 1031 exchange, primary residence. You can't do one with a secondary or vacation home. That will not work. Investor choice. Okay. So these are some of the options, and this is kind of the value that I wanted to talk to you guys about with your clients when they are selling, say, a single family home. They don't live in it anymore. They've leased it out. They have a tenant in there who's been in there for 10 years, and they're sick of getting calls about having to come in and fix the toilet. They want to sell it, and it's worth $2 million here. So they have options, right? They can sell that property and pay the taxes, pay the state tax. We live in beautiful California. The state tax is awful. The federal taxes, and then the net income investment taxes. There's an option there. You can sell that property. You can do seller financing. You can take a note back and you can spread out the gain using installment payments, which a lot of people like to do. Or you can sell the property and put the capital gains into an opportunity zone. Has anybody worked with an opportunity zone? I see that they're growing in popularity and a lot more people are using it. Or again, you can use the 1031 exchange, tax code of the IRS. And again, to clarify, 1031 exchange do not eliminate taxes. You are deferring taxes. You are deferring taxes. You are not eliminating them. But the great part about this is you can continue and continue and continue and continue to defer taxes. But I just want to clarify what that is. We're not eliminating taxes. We are deferring taxes. Again, through the IRS tax code, talks about no gain or loss shall be recognized on the exchange of real property held for productive use or in trade or in business. You talked about it for investment properties. So regardless of what type of property, single family, land, office building, retail, industrial, it has to be investment property for trade or productive use. But that property can be exchanged solely for real property of like kind, which would be held for productive use in trade or business for an investment. So, quick question. Can you exchange from a single family home to a retail storefront?
Sure.
Absolutely. Because again, it's an investment property. It doesn't have to be kind for kind. A lot of people get this confused where you have to exchange a single family home for a single family home. It is not necessary. Again, we'll go into the taxes that we have here. Federal capital gains is 15 to 20% tax on depreciation recapture. You have the 25%. State income taxes up to 13%. California, you're welcome. And then your net income, net investment income tax as well. So again, deferring these taxes when selling a property for a client can be very helpful. Very important. Does everybody know how to calculate basis for a property? Have you had to calculate basis before? It's okay if you haven't. We're going to talk about it here. So taxes are paid on the difference between the sales price and the basis of the property, not the equity. So taxes may be even owed, again, if the property has decreased in value and has negative equity. So that's something to consider. You're calculating taxes based on the basis. Basic calculation of basis. If you want to take a picture here, I will provide all these slides as well at the end of this. Jasmine, I'll give it to you if you want to send it out to everybody, including my contact information. So you have it here. Basis can be calculated with purchase price plus capital improvements for the value of the property that you put on the property, minus the depreciation that you have accumulated over the life of the property. And that gives you your adjusted tax basis. Again, the difference between what you pay taxes on, sales price, and your tax basis here. And I'll give you an example here in a second. So you purchased a property for $2 million. You put $250,000 of capital improvement into that property. Over the life of that property, you've only taken $100,000 in accumulated depreciation through your taxes. So with that being said, you have the 2 million plus the 250,000 that the improvements you put into, minus that 100,000 that you've already taken the benefits for, to give you a tax basis of $2.15 million. You sell that property for $3 million, and the capital gain on that is the 850, not the $1 million. So just something to calculate based on the difference between sales price and basis and what you pay taxes on, because again, that can make a huge difference when making choices. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about exchanges and the basis transfer here. Say that you want to do a 1031 exchange from a condo that you have in Colorado to a townhouse in Texas. The REL and the REPL stand for the relinquished property and the replacement property. So you're going to see that time and time again. The relinquished property, that is the property that you are selling in a 1031 exchange, and the replacement property is the property you're purchasing in a 1031 exchange. FMV is going to be fair market value. So the fair market value for that condo is $200,000. The townhouse in Texas is $200,000. Your basis in that condo is $100,000 for this example, the one in Colorado. And you're going to move that basis over to the townhouse in Texas using 1031 exchange. Your basis remains at $100,000. Let's continue a little further here. You have that condo in Colorado for $200,000 fair market value. The basis is $100,000. You saw a gain in that property of $100,000. So you do a 1031 exchange into that townhouse in Texas. You buy it for $300,000. Your new basis is going to be $200,000. You want to do another 1031 exchange. You're like, wow, I avoided the taxes. I want to see if I can do that again. So you sell that property. It's appreciated over that time. You bought it for $300,000. It's appreciated to $500,000. Real estate tends to do that in California and all over the country. You have a new gain of $300,000, and you want to do a 1031 exchange to a commercial property, say an office building in Irvine. You buy it for $700,000. You have a new basis of $400,000. So again, your basis still is growing. It's not like it's leaving, but you went from owning a condo in Colorado to a commercial office building in Irvine, and just have increased the amount of doors that you own, the amount of real estate that you control, and did not have to pay the taxes in any of the sales of these properties. Increasing your cash flow, diversifying, and just controlling more real estate, which is really the name of the game. And I've seen this in real world examples time and time and time again, of people having just single family home that they owe that's been an investment property, or 4 single family homes that they exchange into bigger and bigger properties. They own a 10-unit apartment building. They exchange out of that. They own a 20-unit apartment building. And it's a really great way to grow net worth. Yeah. Yeah. Volume up. Okay. Is that any better? Can you
It's not the
try?
volume, it's the
Yes,
speed of your presentation. Can you slow down a bit?
absolutely. I apologize. Okay. Get rid of that. All right. So in this example of preserving the equity, and the value that we can add for a client of yours, real life example here. I own an investment property worth $1 million. Say I own it in Irvine. Um, you've owned it for a number of years, and your client comes to you and say, "Hey, I want to sell it. I want to get rid of this property." Uh, there we go. I want to sell my property. I want to purchase three other investment properties. I want to diversify that $1 million worth of real estate. Let's look at this example. I hire a broker from Universal Elite Realty, and they, again, prior to us coming in, they say nothing about a 1031 exchange. They have $1 million in equity in this property. They sell that property, pay the taxes on it. Typically, how people would do. Uncle Sam gets a big old check for $300,000, and that $1 million in equity turns into $700,000 of the net equity that's done after the sale here. We decide to use that $700,000 to then put 50% down on a commercial loan and purchase $1.4 million worth of real estate. This happens all the time. I see people do this all the time, and I've done this myself, and I understand. There's an easier way, a better way, a way to produce more for your client, add more value for your client, and that's the same example of that 1 million in equity. You do a 1031 exchange. You keep that 1 million in equity. Uncle Sam does not get the check. That's too bad. You put 50% down on a $2 million piece of real estate. So you went from $1 million property to selling it for a $1.4 million property in the first example. This $1 million property, 50% down for a $2 million property. So that increase in value for your client will be appreciated. Again, other benefits that we're going to see here, obviously the deferment of payment of taxes, giving you more purchase power. The example we used before, the $700,000, 50% down, giving you a purchase ability of 1.4 million. Now, 50% down of the million used from the 1031 exchange, give you $2 million worth of real estate. Some of the non-tax reasons we use for exchanging, increased cash flow, having that condo in Colorado, having that townhouse in Texas, and then having that commercial building, that office building in Irvine that we talked about, increasing those cash flows. Reduced operating expenses. Anytime that you go from having just one property that you're using the management for and having to handle all the issues that you have, and then you increase that to 4, the price per unit of management helps. So reducing those operating expenses. And then obviously, like what I talked about, increasing your net worth using the example that we used previously. Again, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to do a better job at checking the chat. I'm super happy to answer them. I'm also going to give everybody a chance at the end to ask any questions that they have. But again, feel free to jump in and ask any questions. I know I can speak fast sometimes. Again, the increasing the net worth, what we talked about, you can also use it through leverage. So that example that we were talking about of the $1 million home that we're selling, doing a 1031 exchange, and then buying a $2 million piece of property. Why not, instead of buying a $2 million piece of property, buy 2 properties worth $1 million, so you have 2 properties growing instead of just one. Say you want to consolidate properties as well. We can absolutely do that. You have some single family homes that you want to consolidate and do a 1031 exchange into a commercial property. That is absolutely doable. Like we talked about, the consolidating, diversifying, appreciation, less management issues, and then reducing the risk as well. Say it's the areas that you want to get out of. Los Angeles, downtown LA, you own a couple retail centers in downtown LA that have not been producing well, and you want to go to some emerging markets like Dallas or Phoenix or the US Virgin Islands. While I have this here, I have done international property listings. I've worked with clients who aren't U.S. citizens. And so to clarify a couple things with the 1031 exchange, you cannot do a 1031 exchange out of the United States into a property into the United States or vice versa. You cannot sell a property in the United States and do a 1031 exchange outside of the United States. So in the United States, I have a property that I sell in California and I want to do an exchange in Florida. You can do that because it's within the United States. Say I have a property in Mexico, in Mazatlan, Mexico, that I want to sell, and then buy a golf course in Indio, California. You cannot do that. I say that as a real world example of a client that we've worked with in Mazatlan, Mexico, that was unaware of the tax codes. Okay, the basic structures for a 1031 exchange, how this works. Exchanging need to be of qualified use, the investment property, and then the like kind that we talked about. So exchange, very simple. We know what this means. The act of substituting one thing for another, reciprocal giving and receiving. Direct trade, swap. Again, this is satisfied with a QI by an exchange agreement. On the East Coast, some people do 1031 exchanges using attorneys, but I would say that about 95% of exchanges today are done using QIs, qualified intermediaries. Some of the issues that I've seen, probably the biggest issue that I've seen, I was on a phone call on my way over here, and the gentleman did not know that they could not receive the funds of the proceeds of the property prior to doing a 1031 exchange. And luckily, the property hadn't closed yet, didn't close yet. But he did not set up the 1031 exchange prior to the close of escrow before calling. That's since changed. He's set to close next Friday. We're going to be able to help him out with his 1031 exchange. But the biggest thing I see is people calling in and say, "Hey, I just sold my property. Great, congratulations. Yeah, I received the close of escrow was Friday last week. I received the proceeds. I'm so sorry to do this to you, but that's not going to qualify for a 1031 exchange." So, like I said previously, yes. Question.
There's a revised 1031 exchange, right?
Pardon
Pardon
me?
me? I mean, there's a revised 1031 exchange. So when seller sell their home, they sold their home first, and then after it's sold, they still can do the 1031 exchange.
Are you referring for a reverse exchange? I have trouble hearing you. Yes, you can absolutely do a reverse 1031 exchange. So meaning that if you wanted to sell, or if you wanted to buy the replacement property prior to the sale of the relinquished property, that's something that we can absolutely do. If you want to repeat your question, we had the volume down.
Okay, I was saying the revised 1031 exchange. So which means like a seller, they can sold their property first, and then after a while, I mean, there's a time period, right? They still can do the 1031 exchange. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So you're referring to what's a reverse exchange, and that's when they buy the replacement property. So they buy the property they're going to exchange into before the sale of the property that they're selling, their relinquished property. That's a reverse 1031 exchange. I'm going to get to that in 3 slides, and we'll go over that in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are the biggest 1031 exchange company. Yes, I would say right now, just full transparency, we are the second largest one, but we've grown from the 10th to the second within the last 2 years. I would say within the next year, 2027, we will be the largest QI in the nation. The backing that we've gotten, we were purchased a couple years ago. It just continues to grow, continuing to grow. Did I miss anybody else's? Yeah, I can introduce a little bit more about the company here. I touched on that at the beginning. But Accruit, what I'll do is after the slideshow, I'll take you on the Accruit website and show you a little bit more about the company. Let's just keep diving into this for now. Okay. Like we said, the transaction closes escrow. The exchange agreement is not in place. The taxpayer then again receives the funds from the sale, no longer eligible for a 1031 exchange. An example of how this is broken down for a 1031 exchange, you have the exchanger, the investor, selling their relinquished property to the buyer who is then giving the funds to the QI, the qualified intermediary. They're holding it. And then they are giving it to the seller of the replacement property. So again, on a very basic understanding, QIs hold the money between the close of escrow and the close of escrow of the replacement property. Let's go into what qualified uses are. Replacement property, relinquished property must be held for qualified use. Like we talked about before, that's investment purposes. It cannot be your primary residence, and it cannot be your second home or your vacation home. Some of the issues that I see prior to the close of escrow is people changing ownership structure right before the close of escrow. You own something in an LLC with multiple members, and you own 30% of it. All of a sudden, you change that right before the close of escrow, and then when you do a 1031 exchange, it's just you and that LLC doing the exchange. The IRS will see patterns of this and realize what's going on. So keeping the same ownership structure, and then the person who's doing the exchange, say I'm selling a property and I just own it myself, Lorenzo Bonina. I need to be the person who's buying the next property. It cannot be, say, my wife buying the property. It has to be me. The same person selling is the same person buying.
Can we switch the name from the owner of the name into the trust under the
Yes.
same ownership?
Yes, that's a great question. It just needs to have the same ownership. So if I went from, say, Lorenzo B LLC and then went into the irrevocable trust of Lorenzo B the irrevocable trust of Lorenzo B, that's something that can happen as long as the taxpayer is the same taxpayer. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, makes
Great.
sense.
And then holding the asset for primarily for sale. People who do flipping of houses, wholesaling of houses, holding things for a short time will not qualify for a 1031 exchange. This is something to keep in mind. The IRS sees kind of what you do for a living, how many times you're trying to do a 1031 exchange, where your primary source of income comes in from. So holding this asset for sale is not going to qualify you for a 1031 exchange. Again, continuing this on a little bit, not property held primarily for sale. It's inventory for your business. Again, the IRS really focuses on the story that you tell and your intent and purposes. Again, to this, acquire this, sell this property, or have the property as a long-term hold. The IRS wants to see that you have this property for a long-term hold. How many improvements were done on the property? That's a big giveaway as well. When people want to do, and we'll get into this later, it's called improvement exchanges, build-to-suit exchanges, where they put a portion of the proceeds from the relinquished property into construction budget for the replacement property. They see that they can make improvements on the property, and that's great. You can't do it where you sell the relinquished property, put the proceeds in the replacement property, completely gut and redo the property, and then sell it right after that. That would be fixing and flipping. That's what they're talking about for the improvements on this. Again, what is the profession of the investor? Are they a doctor, or do they fix and flip houses for a living? And then again, how many transactions have they done here? Not dealer property held for sale in ordinary course of business. Again, an example there is a builder selling homes or developing, selling lots. You cannot do this in a 1031 exchange. income, ordinary income. Again, cannot be held primarily for personal use as a primary residence or a secondary home or vacation home. There are some ways to get around this, and I'm going to show you this. But before I say that, I want to clarify this very, very quickly. Always talk to your CPA regarding doing this. Call me directly and give me the exact example. And if you choose to live in it primary or for a small period, under 2 weeks, which is the example that we're going to talk about here, realize that you're getting close to the edge of not being able to qualify for that exchange. So the personal use of, say, your vacation or secondary home must be less than or less than the greater of 14 days. So less than 14 days or 10% of the overall rental period. I would always go with the 14-day rule in this. Always go with the 14 days. So basically what we're talking about here is I have a property in Big Bear for a real world example. And we rent this out, Airbnb. But my wife loves to go to Big Bear in the winter because it snows there. And so we'll go there for 10 days at a time, a week at a time, a weekend at a time. But we also like to go there for the summer for a week at a time. That period is over the 14 days. That wouldn't qualify for a 1031 exchange. Say we've owned it for a couple years, we continue to rent it out. It's gone 2 years past that, and we didn't take that winter trip. We didn't take that summer trip, or we just took one and it was under the 14 days. Then it would then qualify. This is just a slippery slope. You need to prove that you have the income there, the rental income, the leases, the short-term rental. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me right now or at another time. Again, converting properties. Private properties can be converted from personal use to qualifying use. We have our home in Ladera Ranch. I don't want to live there anymore, and so I want to rent out that property for a number of years, 2 years. Put a lease in place, lease out that property. We move somewhere else, and then we do a 1031 exchange out of that property into another property. Again, you got to have careful planning. Highly advise getting a CPA involved and talking to your tax professional. Like kind, what does that mean? Refers to the nature, character of the property, not its grade or quality, what constitutes real property. It's very, 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 very broad. I'm going to use some examples in here that you're going to be like, wow, I did not realize that would be qualified for a 1031 exchange. Land, commercial buildings, stores, offices, warehouses, ranches, farms, rental houses, apartments, tenancy in commons, easements, water rights, air rights, leases over 30 years, including options, condominiums, timberlands, DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trust, real estate investments of any kind. There's a number of things that you can do a 1031 exchange into that's eligible for a 1031 exchange. I understand if a DST is a Delaware Statutory Trust. It's an investment tool, an investment instrument that I'm seeing people sell their commercial real estate that they own, real property, and doing a 1031 exchange into a DST, which is owned by a sponsor, in which that they relinquish the control of said property, and their funds go into this, and they receive the dividends, the proceeds from that property on, say, a yearly basis or a quarterly basis. People in the commercial real estate industry, I would say, are not as excited about this because it takes away the opportunity for help buying the relinquished property. I've seen this trend grow and grow. I remember sitting at a brokerage in 2020. Some guy was calling from New York about DSTs, and nobody wanted to hear what they had to say. They accounted for maybe 1%, 2% of 1031 exchanges. They now are about 17% of all 1031 exchanges. They're all DSTs. We're getting calls about that all the time. And people are getting more comfortable with this type of investment. I think with the growth of alternative investments that we've seen over the last like 10 years with cryptocurrency and other things, people are getting more comfortable with this type of investment. If you have any questions about that, again, feel free to contact me after this. Properties that are excluded, like I said, property that's primarily held for sale, stocks, bonds, notes are not available for a 1031 exchange. Securities, cryptocurrency, interest in a partnership, and then again, your right chooses an action, the right to collect debt. Foreign property, like I said before, foreign property for U.S. property or U.S. property for foreign property. Question or an answer to this. I have a property in Greece and I want to sell that property in Greece and exchange to another property in Greece. Absolutely. If you're a U.S. taxpayer, because if you're not a U.S. taxpayer, none of this applies to you anyways. That makes sense. Not understanding the definition of like kind. Again, it's very broad what can qualify. But you have to make sure it's for productive use, trade, or investment use. Let me see. The phone call I had on the way here, it was a gentleman out of Florida. He's selling his interest in a medical office building because he was a retired doctor. He's selling his interest, and him and his wife wanted to buy floating homes in, I believe it was Portland, but I could be wrong. But they wanted to buy floating homes, so they were looking to buy dock slips as well as the properties as the boats. But it wasn't actual boats. They're domiciles. They're not boats or anything like that. And so we were looking to see if that qualified for. And I put him on the line with one of our attorneys to get that clarified. But this is an example of what people are trying to do 1031 exchanges for and what you could be eligible for. Okay, so what we're going to talk about was the reverse exchanges, a little bit more complicated exchanges, which again, we'd be happy to help out with that. What we've been talking about now and the rules we're going to go over now are all for forward exchanges. These same rules do apply to reverse exchanges, build-to-suit exchanges, improvement exchanges, but they can be manipulated in different ways. So an exchange time frame starts at the close of escrow. The close of escrow, that's day one of that exchange. For that first 45 days, you can identify properties for the exchange. You can close down those properties, but you have to identify what you're going to exchange out of in that first 45 days. That's called the identification period. After that, for the next subsequent 135 days, for a total of 180 days, that's the time frame that you have in which to close on that property. Again, you can close before, but it's within the 180 days, the 6-month window that we have to complete the 1031 exchange. 45 days to identify, and again, identifying those properties. We'll get into that in a second. 45 days to identify those properties. There's some rules that we're going to get into about that. And then the 135 days for the total of 180 days for the completion period to sell the relinquished property, buy the replacement property. Starts at the close of escrow of the relinquished property. So you have a single family home and you're like, wow, it's been on the market for a really long time. It took us forever to sell. I don't think I'm going to qualify because I've run out of time for a 1031 exchange. It doesn't start to the close of escrow. That's something I want to clarify with you guys. Okay. How to identify properties. It's got to be in writing. Address needs to be signed by the taxpayer. It needs to identify the property in a non-ambiguous way. 127 Main Street, Tustin, California, needs to identify it. Be delivered to a qualified person, like we talked about a QI. We had a client who was not identifying any properties, didn't realize that they needed to send over to us even after multiple clarifications that they needed to send us over the identified property. So on the 44th day, I called him and let them know. And they got it over to us and right within the time frames. But you have to make sure that you're staying within the confines of 1031 exchange. I do know that there's companies out there that will backdate finding the requirements. We do not do that. QIs that you want to work with do not do that. Absolutely. So you want to make sure. And again, we have the technology. This is what Universal Elite Realty is signed up for in terms of having those Those time frames as set to reminders for everyone so that they are able to identify and they don't fall back and have to pay the taxes. Identification rules, identifying multiple properties. There's 2 rules that we want to take a look at. 3 properties can be identified regarding their fair market value. So 3 properties that you have the option to exchange into, or you can identify as many properties or investment instruments that we talked about, like the DSTs. It's 200%, can't exceed 200% of the fair market value of the relinquished property. So why do they give you 3 properties to choose from? Why not just 1? Because sometimes, and this has been my experience, that the properties that I go under contract on do not close. And this happens all the time. Or somebody else buys it, or you run out of time. So yeah, up to 3 properties or the 200% rule. So identify 3 properties or 200% of the relinquished property fair market value. Okay. Suggestions. 45 days to identify. That's referred to as the identification period. The completion period is then 135 days thereafter for the total of 180. Start and end with transfer, not contracts. I've assigned PSA. That's not when the start of those timeframes start. Close on the replacement property within the identification period. Complete all due diligence within the identification period if possible. Review the backups like we talked about. You have a client and they're like, oh, I want to exchange in this property. I know it's the property I want to exchange into. Have some backups. Maybe have some DSTs as backups as well, but just have backups because things don't always work out. And when you're on that 45th day, you haven't identified anything, there's nothing that we can do. Okay, this is a little bit more about more flexible exchanges, things that aren't as straightforward as forward exchanges. These are going to be referred to as reverse exchanges, build to suit exchanges, improvement exchanges, and it's going to create something called safe harbor. So with a forward exchange, like we know, we're selling the relinquished property and then buying the replacement property. With a reverse exchange, which we're going to get into here, you are buying the replacement property prior to the close of escrow on the relinquished property. So again, you need to reverse the timeframes of what we're doing here. Still within the same 45 days, 180 days, but you're doing it prior to. There's a number of reasons why people do this. I'll get into this further. We offer this services as well. Universal Realty can offer those services as well. It's the QI is creating those exchange accommodation title holder to hold title for the portion of which they're purchasing the property in your name, the replacement property, while before the sale of the relinquished property, and that time frame between the purchase of the replacement property, that time difference between that and then the sale of the relinquished property and the reverse exchanges. I'm going to give a couple examples here. It's going to clarify this a little bit more. Taxpayer able to close on the acquisition of the replacement property before the relinquished property is sold. Reasons for this: taxpayer finds the property he or she wants to acquire before he has sold the property to be relinquished. I really like this site. I know it's going to get other offers on it. I want to take it down. Buying this property before the sale of your relinquished property. This happens all the time. The sale of the relinquished property falls through, but the taxpayer doesn't want to lose out on the replacement property. See that all the time. Taxpayer doesn't want to have to deal with the pressure of finding something in that 45 days. So they already have something identified that's set to close before then. It's a real thing. And then again, improvements may need to be made on the replacement property. That's another example of what we're going to use, build to suit, as well as an improvement exchange. So this is an example of what we're going to be able to do here. And this is an example of how that's going to happen. The EAT, the exchange accommodation or title holder, is going to receive the money from the exchanger. We're not fronting the money, they're fronting the money. And that comes to another issue that we're talking about, is financing the replacement property prior to the sale of the relinquished property. So we, as the exchange accommodator title holder, we hold title to the property that you are exchanging into before you sell your relinquished property. And then we transfer it over to you upon the sale of your relinquished property. Right here. We hold title, the QI repays the loan based on the proceeds, or based on what you're going to be giving to us, and the exchange is done there. This one is a little bit more costly. It's more of a custom price point. So if at any point in time your client is worried about the timeframes of a 1031 exchange, or worried about what they can or cannot do, I'm happy to get them on a phone call with myself or one of our 8 subject matter experts, our 8 in-house attorneys, which now you all have access to, and help them. Again, it would just provide more value to you and your client, and make us all look better. Again, improvement exchanges, what we just talked about. Taxpayers able to use exchange proceeds to make the improvements on a property that's being purchased in an exchange. Reasons for this: they find a vacant lot or a value add in a preferred location in Newport Beach. I want to exchange. I want to buy this piece of land, and then I want to put a medical office building on there. Taxpayer purchases a property but has leftover funds and time to make improvements. I bought this apartment building, but I gotta redo the parking lot, or I gotta redo the roof. Those proceeds can go from the purchase of it, as well as those improvements. And then sometimes it's just easier and more economical to purchase a property and just improve on it. This is what this looks like here, and this is a real world example. You are selling a relinquished property for $1 million. The replacement property is only $600,000, and you're like, wait, how does that work? You're going to have $300,000 in the remodel, and you're going to do a $100,000 resurfacing for a total of $400,000. Combine that with the $600,000 purchase price, gets you $1 million there. That is your build to suit exchange example. So selling that property for $1 million, buying the replacement property for $600,000, and putting $400,000 of improvements on the property to get the $1 million for $1 million swap. The big thing here, and this is what I like to talk about with people: all improvements must be completed within 180 days. I know I've worked on construction projects before. They take a long time, so this is something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to go to the website here, but are there any questions before I go into the website and talk about QI Connect, exchange-wise, anything? Anything in the room here? Okay.
Is this email for schedule appointment?
Yes. Yeah, this goes directly to me. So if you want to text me, call me, email me, we can schedule an appointment. I'm located in Southern California in South Orange County. Just give me a little bit of a heads up, and I can be in the city of industry at 10:30 in the morning on a Friday.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help. Any other questions? Okay. I really do appreciate you guys' time. I know this can be a little long-winded, and I can be a little long-winded. Let's go. Where's the website? I apologize. Where do we go here? Yeah. So, let's yeah, where's the website? Is it just on the? Oh, thank you. Perfect. All right. I want to touch on this first. So the partnership that we have with Universal Elite Realty, I'm going to get to that in a second. They receive all the benefits that Accruit has. Accruit is the name of my company. We are owned by Inspira Financial, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. And Accruit is that company that's owned by Inspira. All of the financial securities, the team, the staff, Universal Elite Realty has access to all this. So that fidelity bonding, the errant emissions, the cyber liability. This allows you to do any sort of 1031 exchange, any one of the transactions, with having those insurances in place, because this is the highest kind of financial security that you're going to see in the QI industry. So we have this. I send out this flyer a lot to just remind people. I'm going to do a quick side story to talk about the dangers of this. Make sure if at all you're in the future at another brokerage, or you're doing an exchange, you're doing a 1031 exchange, you're not using us, check on the QI company, because in the state of California, you have to have a minimum of $1 million in fidelity bonding. And if you don't, you cannot legally be a QI. I don't know a lot of properties in California that are under $1 million. I know there's some, but with commercial properties, it's more so rare. There was a company out of Los Angeles that was a QI, and they had the minimum amount of tax liability, and it was a husband and wife. The husband was a little bit more adventurous than the wife, and he thought it was a good idea to invest the funds, the assets that the QI was holding onto, into cryptocurrency. And so he held about $62 million, I want to say, in assets under management. And within that week span, that went from 62 million to about 2.5 million that they held. And they had to let their investors know that they could not complete their 1031 exchange because they had lost their proceeds there. So not all QIs are created equally. You're in a partnership with a very good one that has backing and it's continuing to grow. So just keep that in mind. It really matters who you use. And again, I can provide all this here. My contact info, the Accruit, and what we're going to do is get the branding for Universal Elite Realty, so it just shows all of your company. You can have your contact information. You can put my contact information as a partner with you guys work with, and I'm happy to present any way you want me to. Let's go here. This is our website here. The company is based out of Denver, Colorado. I was there a few weeks back. We have people nationwide. So I run Southern California. We have a woman who runs Northern Cal, but we have people who are in Florida, New York, East Coast, anywhere that you have transactions, we can operate nationwide. We have our direct line here, and then we have my direct line. So my thought process here of when you guys have 1031 exchanges is to contact me directly and then use a backup of our direct line here to contact and let them know, because anybody can help facilitate what we can do on our end, anybody at our company. So that's this direct line here, the 800-237-1031 on there. And I can give you guys this website here if you need to contact or ask any questions that you have here. What I want to get to, and part of what we have here is an agreement and a partnership that we talked about, where we are going to share portions of revenue back with your company. How QIs make their money, believe it or not, it's not based just on upfront costs. We typically charge clients $1,285. That's $1,285 for typical forward exchange, 1031 exchange. That's not nothing, but it's not going to keep the lights on. How QIs make their money is assets under management. So that time frame that we talked about, where a QI holds the funds, the QIs hold that funds. They hold that funds and another client's funds and another client's funds, and all of a sudden they get to $1 billion in assets under management. And they hold it with banks that pay them interest on this. And so that's how QIs make their money. I don't know if a lot of people know that. I like to be very transparent about that. And how they've done that for years is just not sharing of the proceeds there. So what Accruit is doing differently, which other QIs are starting to get the point, is they're doing that as well. With they're not charging the client more, but they're making less money on it because they're giving, again, the revenue share back to Universal Elite Realty or back to the client. But that's the partnership that we have here. Jasmine and I are going to go over in detail the online platform that we have that is going to give you all the time frames that you need to know for your client, where they're at in the process, and the ability to input all this information. The information, I think, for brokers is the most important thing. Being able to know, oh, wow, this client is on day 40 and they haven't identified something, and you have a new listing here in a city of industry that would be perfect. Call them. Boom. I know this is a big brokerage, so working together to find and maybe double end those deals would be very helpful. And again, the revenue share that we talked about. So, yeah, I'm gonna just leave a couple minutes for questions, but that's all I have. I will go back to my info here. If you have any questions, there we go. Yeah, any questions for me on any aspects of 1031 exchange, myself, our company, the partnership, anything? Okay. I really, really appreciate your time today. Like I said, I'll share this PowerPoint presentation. My cell, both of those numbers ring directly to my phone. If I don't answer, I will call you right back. Pretty good at communicating. Feel free to loop me in on any email chain that you have with your clients. And again, I look forward to working with you, being a partner here at University Elite Realty. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.